Hi everybody, Chef AJ here. I am the author of a book called Unprocessed, and I am going to show you how I make one of my very favorite recipes from this book. It is the mint chocolate mousse torte. This dessert is decadent, yet it's made from only whole plant foods. It's literally made from only 5 simple ingredients that you can find just about anywhere. And it's not only vegan, it's whole food plant-based, it's raw, it's gluten-free, it's SOS-free, which means sugar-free, oil-free, and salt-free. Now, if you're following the Ultimate Weight Loss Program or wanting to lose weight, I don't recommend you eat this. But even though it is calorie-rich, it's also nutrient-rich. You might want to learn how to make it though in case you have to go to a potluck or make a special dessert for company. And anybody that's eating the standard American diet, this is certainly going to be a lot healthier because it has no flour, it has no sugar, it has no oil, it has no salt. So, it's funny because I was just at a 50th birthday party this weekend and I brought this for the dessert. And I knew pretty much all of the 30 ladies that were there. And they said, "Oh my God, this is so delicious. Is this a new dessert?" I said, "No, it's from Unprocessed, a book I wrote 6 years ago that they all had." And so I want to encourage you, if you don't have my book, to please get it. It's available on Amazon. You can also get it in Kindle. But if you do have my book, take it out again because there might be some recipes you haven't tried, like the mint chocolate mousse torte. So let's get started. You need only 4 pieces of equipment to make this dessert. We have a food processor here fitted with the S blade. It's called the S blade because it looks like a letter S. And people ask me all the time what the best food processor is. Well, the best one that you can afford. I had a really expensive Cuisinart and it broke and I couldn't get it replaced and it just was heartbreaking. And then I bought this $80, actually $79 Oster one at Walmart, and it's been great. When I needed a replacement part, it was less than $5. I love this one. I do recommend though, at least for my recipes, you get at least one that's 14 cups instead of, the 12 cup or smaller. We're going to need just a regular spatula. We're going to need what's called an offset spatula, which you can get at Walmart actually for less than $7. And we're going to need what's known as a springform pan. Now, we had Valentine's Day recently, and I actually have a heart-shaped springform pan. Springform pans come in many different shapes and sizes, but I like this one because it's silicone and nothing sticks to it. The great thing about springform pans, which also people use for cheesecakes, is that they're just really easy to use and they're oven safe as well. So, first thing I'm going to do is make the crust, and it's really simple. I'm just going to take my walnuts, and if you do eat nuts, I recommend walnuts raw, unsalted, because they're probably the healthiest nuts, high in omega-3 fatty acids. And I'm going to just process this briefly into a flour-like consistency. I don't want to let the food processor run and run because then I'll get nut butter, which is another component of the recipe, but for now, just very briefly. Is made it into a flour-like consistency, sort of like breadcrumbs. The next thing I'm going to do is add my cocoa powder, or you could use raw cacao powder. I prefer alkali-free. Use the best brand that you can afford or your favorite brand. I prefer a Belgian brand, even though I no longer eat chocolate. When I did, I was sort of a chocolate snob, aficionado, if you will, and I always liked the dark, rich ones like Valrhona. Hershey's actually makes a pretty good dark one, though. So I want to incorporate that into it, and if you excuse me because I forgot the next important ingredient. I should have had everything out. That's called the mise en place, but luckily I have these pre-measured. I have my organic pitted dates.
How many does this serve, they're asking?
Well, that's a really good question. How hungry are you? The truth is when I made this dessert at the restaurant, it was the best-selling raw dessert. At the restaurant, we would cut it into 12 slices. But remember, we were charging between $7 and $9 a slice. That's a pretty big slice. Now, when I served it at the birthday party on Sunday, I cut it into 16 slices. This is a very rich dessert, so I would say at least 16 slices, but truthfully, I've gotten 24 out of it. So if you want to get a lot of pieces out of it, I recommend using a square or rectangular springform pan, and then you can cut little tiny cubes. I've even gotten 56 when I've done it that way. So now I'm going to add the dates. The dates are not only my sweetener, I only use dates, the fruit, the whole fruit, nothing but the whole fruit, so help me God, but they're also going to be the glue that's going to put this together. And really what I'm making right now is another recipe from a book called The Brownies, which are on page, I don't remember, I want to say 1 165. I'm not 100% sure. But the brownies are on page 69. No, the mint chocolate mousse torte is on page 69. The brownies are on page 165. So the crust really is one of the recipes called brownies. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to incorporate this. Get it to stick together easily. And so I will take a little bit in my hand, and when I can do what's called the break point, when I can push it together into a ball and make it go like this and it sticks together, I know it's ready. It's almost ready, just needs a tiny bit more processing. Go. Perfect. Now, in less time than it would take you to preheat the oven and make a pre-made cake mix or brownie mix, you could have this amazing dessert ready. Now, because it's a mint chocolate mousse torte, and you can make this other flavors. I've done it orange, I've done it, all different kinds of flavors. I'm going to add a little bit of mint extract. But you do not want to add your extract until your crust is where you want it, because if you add liquids too soon, you won't get the desired result. And now I'm ready to put it into my springform pan. You want to make sure that anytime you're working with nuts or even herbs in a food processor that it's completely dry. Because if there is one drop of water because you just washed it or took it out of the dishwasher, it won't work. You'll get pesto instead. So using my hand, I am just, you want to get a close-up here, Charles? Look how quick. This crust is done. I mean, you can't make a pie crust that quick. Quick. There we go. Our pie crust is completely done. Our mousse crust, that's that. And again, this is the brownie recipe, so I could have formed this into balls. I could have put that in my little silicone brownie mold like I've done before. So there we go.
Donna's asking, can this be made a couple of days ahead?
Oh my God, it can be made a couple of months in advance because it's a frozen dessert, which I'm going to stick in the freezer. And if you put it in a good piece of Tupperware or Ziploc bag, it will last for months. And the great thing is because of the way I designed the recipe texturally, it's never going to get so hard in the freezer that you won't be able to cut it. But it must be kept in the freezer because I don't use anything like soy lecithin or any kind of stabilizers or preservatives. Now I'm going to make the filling. And for that, I am going to take my nut butter, which I actually made in my food processor. I don't need to clean this out in between because it's basically the same ingredients, just reconfigured. So I'm going to add my walnut butter, which I made in my food processor, fitted with the S blade. It's just much cheaper than buying it. And I'm going to add my date paste. I use the recipe on page 65 of Unprocessed, and if you are making my recipes, I recommend you use my recipe for date paste because it has the exact ratio of liquid to solid necessary for my recipes to work. I know there's other recipes for date paste, but I think this one is perfect. It's easy to make. It will keep in the refrigerator for months, in the freezer even longer, and you can use it for all your sweetening needs. So I'm now going to incorporate the nut butter and the date paste. Then I am going to add my good quality cocoa powder and some unsweetened organic coconut. The mint extract was already in the date paste in this particular case. At some point to take your spatula and just give it a nice little stir to make sure it's going to get fully incorporated. What I love about these kind of desserts that I make is that I don't have to turn my oven on. You know, it gets really hot where I live in Southern California, and the last thing I want is to have to preheat my oven and keep it on for an hour baking. So I'm incorporating that just a little bit better. I'm going to let it run just a few more seconds. And voila, we are done. So now I'm going to take my spatula, and if you want to get a close-up, look at this. This is decadence. And really all it is dates and nuts and a little cocoa powder and a little extract of your choice. Again, I'm using mint because I think there's nothing better than marrying mint with chocolate. And then I'm going to put this in. I'm going to show you a really great trick, guys, for your food processor, whether you're making something like this or hummus. You can see that a lot of the mixture is stuck on the blade, and that's kind of difficult to get off. But let me show you a great trick I learned from my sister-in-law, Lauren. There's probably almost a cup of filling here. We don't want to waste that goodness. So what you do is you put the food processor back on the base, and through the science of centrifugal force, you briefly pulse it, and look at that. Everything is off the blade. I have a pretty clean blade right now, and now I can get the rest of the filling out of the food processor really easily. Now, if you really didn't have an offset spatula, you probably could use a regular spatula or a knife, but it is just so much easier to get a smooth, level top on any of these kind of desserts if you're willing to get the offset spatula. They also come in many different sizes because you see that it's beveled, and so I don't have to work very hard to get a nice smooth top. I wish there was such a thing as smell-o-vision, because if you guys could smell this mint and this chocolate. And what's interesting is, of course, desserts are treats. We're not supposed to eat them every single day 3 times a day. But if somebody is going to eat a dessert, I would much rather see them eat a sugar-free, oil-free, salt-free, flour-free dessert from my book Unprocessed than eat anything, even a low-fat dessert made of sugar and flour, which are just highly addictive drugs and not foods. And because there's so many nutrients packed into the dates and the nuts, you're going to need a lot less to feel satisfied than if you were eating a flour and sugar dessert. Now this is basically done, and you could put raspberries on the top, but what I like to do is decorate it, this is optional, with some cacao nibs. This is just pieces of the cacao bean that have been chopped off. I do not get the ones with sugar, and this gives it a nice little crunch. Again, I've made this many times when I haven't had the nibs, so I haven't put them in. You can sprinkle as many or as few as you like on top. It just does make it look a little bit pretty. So I'm going to just sprinkle the whole top because that's how many I put out. And then I am going to take a little bit more of my organic unsweetened flake coconut on the top, again because it looks pretty, because I just want to cover any of the sticky parts just like that. Now coconut of course is high in fat, as are nuts, but you can actually get coconut that's been defatted in many of the stores, and you can get it in many different shreds. This is a medium shred, which I think works well for this recipe, but you could get it super fine as well. So that's that. Then I'm going to take my hand again, and I'm just going to press, 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 just so that that coconut and the nibs stay on top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in the freezer until it's solid. And that could be overnight, or that could be about 8 hours. Everybody's freezer is at a different temperature. You know, at the restaurant we had a deep freeze, so it could be ready in just a couple of hours. But I would say give it at least overnight or 8 hours. I wish I could show you how beautiful it looked when I cut it, but I can't because it's too soft right now. But there you have it, page 69 of my book, Unprocessed, a decadent, vegan, raw, gluten-free, sugar-free, oil-free, salt-free, mint chocolate mousse torte. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Chef AJ, and I make healthy taste delicious.